Welcome to Women in the Nude, where we expose everything except for our bodies. We'll leave that to your imagination. You guys, we have Adele Parks. I am so excited, and I just want everybody to know that we just spent like almost 30 minutes chatting instead of actually doing this while we were recording. We just have so much to say all the time that like we can't help it. So we have finally turned the cameras on and recorded because it's just I could talk to you literally for hours, Adele. So
Well,
for those
and
who don't
indeed we
know,
have. Yeah.
and yeah, we do. What are you talking
Yeah.
about?
And
Of
it
course
was
we
just
do.
so
What am
adorable
I
because
talking about?
whenever we do talk, we just pick up. That was just,
Yes, it's like,
we just literally picked up, which is fabulous.
and those are the best kinds of friends.
They
So,
are.
for those who don't know, I did a movie in June called The Image of You. We're very excited for it to come out next year. But Adele Parks is the author of the novel turned movie, and I am so lucky that I got to spend, a month essentially, maybe a little
I'm,
bit more, maybe a little bit less,
no,
with you and getting to know you. And now we just became fast friends and lifetime friends. So I'm so
we,
thankful for you. And I'm so excited that you wanted to come on the show. Thank you.
and I feel that exactly and even more because you were just amazing in the film. And I really can't wait for everybody to see it. And yeah, we'll talk about that so much. We've got so
You're
much to
so
talk about. I
sweet.
don't know where to start. Yeah.
I know that's the thing. I've got a lot of notes because I'm like, I need to try and keep some sort of flow going. Otherwise, they're just going to hear us talk about, our general nonsense that we love to chat about. But um, since some people might not know you, I would love for you to I know all of this, but I would love for people to know why you became a writer, why you fell in love with it.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, yeah, well, okay, because it is just
it's a
truth, truth,
huge
truth all
question.
the
I
way.
know. I'm
It's a
sorry.
big question. So as a really little girl, first of all, I was fat. And I think I just never you see, you're laughing. People
I'm laughing because that's the last thing I thought you were going to
I know.
say.
I know, but it actually is all part of the process. So I was just this ginormous child that was, too tall. I was about the height I am now at 5 year old. I mean, I was big.
You are so
And
ridiculous.
I
I
was very
highly.
wide and I was funny. That's what I did because I didn't look good. And especially then, I'm in my 50s, but especially then when little girls were expected to be pretty and sweet and quiet. And I wasn't any of those things. I wasn't pretty and I wasn't sweet. I definitely wasn't quiet, but I was funny and ready. I liked reading books and I read all the time. And I mean, my dad, God love him, still alive, thank you, God. But he literally said to me when I was about 9, "We're lucky you're so clever because you're not the pretty one," which is not what dad's
Oh
meant
my
to say.
gosh.
But the point is, I got kind of approval for reading. So that was a nice big tick. But that wouldn't have been enough for me because I got approval for like neat handwriting and good at maths and other things too. But for me, we lived in a like little village. We had to walk sort of a few miles to go home. My sister's 3 years older than I am, and my mum was no way going to kind of pick me up, walk me home, and then pick the next one up and walk back. And even if she did, who would have looked after me and all of that? So she used to tell me to wait in the library. And I would wait in the library every night after school and choose 3 books, probably read one while I was there. So got to a kind of fourth one. And it was a librarian when I was very young, about 7 year old, said to me, Adele, because we obviously knew each other quite well by then. It's a little village, everybody knew everybody. Adele, do you think one day you will grow up and you'll be an author? And it was just somebody having that idea for me and that confidence for me. And it sounded glamorous and amazing, and no one else was doing it. And I probably am a bit of a show off and quite like the idea of doing something no one else is doing. And I always just told stories. I come from a big family full stop, but lots of women. A stone deaf great nana who we had to write everything down for. So I used to, when the conversations were happening between my nana and my mum and all the aunts and all the great aunts, I used to write things up for my great nana and slip her the notes.
Aw.
So I kind of, there weren't, you say, they were really cheeky. And she loved it. They would be
I
kind of like,
bet.
oh, so-and-so's saying this, but I don't really believe her. And, we'd have quite our own
I
little
love
talk.
that.
So all these things, I think, added up to me wanting to be a writer. And I think, so it's like a kind of experience as a child that it gave me some validation, it gave me some direction, a bit of standout. But I think as time went on, it became more profound than that, because I found that writing helped me sort my life out, sort my head out. And the world is so confusing, so vastly confusing,
Yeah.
and even more so when you're a teen, for example. So I remember as a teen kind of writing all the time. I thought it was a big secret that I wanted to be a writer, which is quite funny, because when I did finally get a contract, which wasn't until I was 30, but a contract to become a writer, I told all my friends, and I expected it to be this big sort of shock moment. And kind of to the last woman, they laughed and said, "Oh, thank goodness, because every time you're drunk, you bang on about it all the time."
Oh my gosh, that's
And I
really
thought I
cute.
had this secret thing that was going on in my head. But apparently every time I was drunk, I'd say, what I really want to do? I really want to be a writer. One day I'll be a writer. So there's
Truth comes
loads of
out.
reasons, but here I am.
I love that. I want to go back for a second to your childhood and just say that you're I don't believe that, but then you said that your dad said that, and I've had people tell me similar things when I was going through my health issues and gaining weight and losing weight and all those things, and it's so sad, and we're laughing about it now. But the value of, like you said, little girls are supposed to be quiet. They're supposed to be, pretty and petite, and all of these things that we put on ourselves as women, starting from the age of a little girl, I think is so shitty. It pisses me off, I've heard this story a lot, this type of story a lot, and it makes me really sad that so much of our value is based on that. When we're growing and learning and trying to figure out who we are as a person and dealing with shitty situations, it's a real bummer that is a trend. And I have a little boy, so much of that. Not that men are immune to it. They have a different type of body dysmorphia that I feel like their standards, they have those too, and it's also unfair. But I feel like it is so maybe it's just more obvious and more pressed on women to be a certain way from a young age.
I think the thing is, it's not only what's pressed on us to be a certain way, but we're excluded from a lot of the good stuff. So eating's fun.
Yeah.
So, people shouldn't be made to feel they can't eat whatever they want, or,
Right.
obviously there's healthy decisions and all that. I think with boys, going back to because we're both mums of boys, very different ages, but both mums of little Scorpio boys, as it happens.
Yes.
But mine's a very big Scorpio boy now. He's 23 and 6 foot odd. But for boys, I think there's all the problems of, are they strong enough? Why are they showing their emotions? They shouldn't cry in public, all that kind of thing. And I hope that my generation teaching people your age and teaching my son are kind of now accepting that's not true. Boys can show their emotions. It's not true that women can't play tough sports and climb trees if they want and wear trousers and cut their hair and put on weight. We can be both things. But yeah, boys were told to be big and strong and do the fun chasing around thing, and girls were sort of told to sit down and sew. So actually sitting down and reading was significantly more fun than sitting down and sewing. But the thing about a book, even though you sit down to do it, to read, I always believed I was escaping when I was reading. And I did want to escape. I did. I don't really like being a child. And I love being an adult, by the way. It's great fun. But and that's
Same.
good, because you're an adult for a lot longer.
Right.
God willing.
I was going to say, let's hope. Yeah.
But well, I already have been, so we're fine. We know my statistics from my side. But the kind of, you know, you could be in another country, you could be in another time zone, you could be in another body, you could be in a male or a female body just by picking up a book. And that's actually incredibly freeing for anybody at any stage in their life. But I think it's a really wonderful thing for children. And people sometimes miss that. They want their kids to read because they want to increase their vocabulary. Great, great take, good, we should. They want them to read because they want them to be top in their class. Great take, lovely. But actually, for me, I want my kid to read so he will become the most empathetic version of himself. And the reason a person who reads is empathetic is because they get to live many, many, many lives, not just their own. A bit like being an actor.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautifully said, and I 1,000% agree. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love being an actor is because you are stepping into somebody else's shoes. I've often played characters that are kind of crazy too, right? And
I can vouch for
this
that.
last one is no exception. But what I love about that is that you, as an actor, have to decide what that person's motives are and what makes them tick. So you are trying to find what made them the way that they are.
Mm.
And I think that has definitely helped me, like you're saying, with empathy, is trying to understand, even if somebody hurts me or if somebody's doing the wrong thing or whatever the nature is, it's where did that come from? You know, that doesn't just happen to somebody. It's a combination of nature versus nurture. Maybe they would have that tendency, but it is what happened to them that has kind of pointed them in a bigger direction. And I agree that books do the same thing. I want Hendrix to also have that. And I'm sure your son as well has gotten that from you. I have no doubt. But it is, I think, so important to let kids expand their imagination. It starts there.
It
You know,
does.
even though a book is giving you, the outline and telling you what's happening, you're still creating something in your head.
You
You are
are.
developing that world. You are writing in all the details, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. It really
Um,
is.
and I think that's also why, just, side note, why when a book becomes a movie or a television series, it is so, people get so protective over it because they see, they're about to see anyway, something that they have detailed and made up in their
Invested
head.
in. Yeah.
They've invested in it and they
Yeah.
want it to be what they think it is. So many people are so passionate about that, down to obviously casting, to what it looks like, to the music that's played, to the colors. There's so many things that go into TV and film when it is being adapted, and it's wild.
I had this
I
view before we made our film. I had this view that I used to say, oh, well, if you sell your house and they redecorate, you can't complain because you sold your house. So that
Right.
was kind of my view on, oh, if I sell my rights, you've got to trust the person you sold the rights to. And I think I was quite good with that. I was quite lucky because I helped polish the script, so I knew what was coming. But I started with, on my book, I started with the very premise. First of all, the ending's different in the film. So
Right.
I'm actually going out saying to people, well, if you enjoyed the book, great, because you don't need to say, oh, it's different from the film is different. It is. The starting point, it really is going to be. And secondly, if you didn't enjoy the book, you will definitely enjoy the film because you've still got a second shout at it. And if you haven't read the
Oh,
book and you're just seeing the film, when you go back, you will be entertained anyhow because it's slightly different ending. But actually, I had great fun with that because, it is all made up. It's all in my head anyway. So the fact that I got
right.
a chance to say, well, what if this didn't happen? What if something else happened? And actually, the book is written and set in the UK, and we wanted it set in America, and the producers wanted it set in America. And it was really strange because when I was on set, a lot of people kept saying to me, how do you feel about seeing your words, your
Right.
book as a film? And the thing is, it very quickly stopped being my book. It very quickly actually became your film, and it really did. I mean, I couldn't have hoped for better. You played two parts in the film.
Yes, I play two
Annie and
characters.
two
So
sisters, yeah,
fun.
twin sisters, and I didn't know you when I wrote that, but you are so them. I can't even imagine them in any other way. And I have reread the book since we filmed. And now when I read it, I just hear you and I just see you. And
Oh, I love that.
it's so interesting. So it's kind of become one of those chicken and egg situations where
Right.
we do know what came first. The book definitely came first, but they both have evolved in their own special way. It's so much fun.
Well, I mean, that's an honor because if you ended up hating my performance, that would have really sucked, you know?
But
So
yes,
I'm so glad that you like you like me for Zoe and Anna. It was such a this script, the story really, let's just say it's the story because that is what it is. The story captured me the first time I read the script. When I took the meeting with Jeff, our director, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like it was one of those things where the twist really got me. I was not expecting it. I was like, I started it being like, okay, I know what this movie is. And it completely surprised me. And I was dreaming about it. I knew exactly how I wanted to do the scenes. I could not stop thinking about it. And this was far before I ever got it. But I felt so connected to it. And I was so excited at the prospect of playing two characters because it's so fun. I was, my OCD was like getting out all my sticky notes once I got it. And like everything was like highlighted for different people and it was so fun. It was really like an actor's dream, but I just felt so connected to it. And I think it's the way that you write, like, I have, the book and I love it so much. I love your voice. I love the way that you put characters across and you're so inviting and it's so easy to get wrapped up in it in a good way, but this whole movie got me in the best ways. I loved every second, every part of it was just so special. And with Pretty Little Liars, I was adapting a book. I was adapting a character that a lot of people cared a lot about. And I've heard that the same thing, in the beginning of the show, so many people had lots of opinions on who was cast. The five of us were really important in making their visions come to life. And it's interesting to see the things that they loved and hated. And thankfully I was one of the things that they loved. I fit most people's description of who Allison was. And it's a huge responsibility.
I imagine it is. And also
Yeah.
it's a challenge, I guess, because it's a responsibility because you want to do well by the book and the writers and all that. But also you want it to be you. You're an artist. You've got your own worth and vision and you're bringing it too. I think that's what was most exciting for me because I did see a whole bunch of incredible people bringing their vision to here's the props that are going to be in the background. These are the costumes. This is the makeup. This is the hair. This is sort of every single minute detail. So many people caring. I did tear up a couple of times. I remember the first time I drew up onto set, and I think of myself as quite practical. And I've written 23 novels now. Okay,
so crazy.
23 novels. I'm very lucky. They've all been bestsellers. Everything's been marvelous. But this is the first one that has been adapted into a film. And so it was something new and it was out of my comfort zone and, relatively late on to be out of your comfort zone. And with, with a kind of situation where everything else was great and easy and wonderful. And if I wanted to, I could have just carried on writing books and kept my head down and I would have been fine. But I am so glad I took on this extra challenge and met you. And what a year. Wow. Yeah.
I mean, not only that, but when I got it, I had no idea that you were going to be on set. I was thrilled, and I hadn't really talked to you or I didn't know much. And so it was just, I was so excited that I was going to have you on set and that I was able to pick your brain and, get any sort of backstory or thoughts that I, questions that I had about the characters and just in general, how you wrote it, why you wrote it, all of those good things. But I was even more pleasantly surprised at how great you are. And I can't leave Jim out. Your husband for, again, people who don't know, Jim is such a wonderful human, and I love the way that he supports you and is just your champion. It like warms my heart because it really does make me feel like, the type of relationship that Hudson and I have,
I
where
agree. We
it's
see
all in.
we see ourselves in you. I mean, your little
Oh,
family is so like
yeah,
our now grown up family, but this sort of husband being massively supportive of the wife, having a
yeah,
young baby. There's a slight difference in our world, I suppose. Slight to us, but massive to everybody else. Is Jim's actually my second husband, and I met Jim when Conrad was that's my son, was just 13 months, and
I know this story and I love the story, and I want you to
he
tell
loves
it
this
to
story. So he's very
me.
happy I tell this story. But yeah, it was so weird because I'd been married for 5 years and had Conrad and been with Conrad's dad for 2 years before that. So it's, a real relationship 7 years down the line, and it didn't work. And, when the baby was 10 months old, Simon surprised me by telling me he wasn't happy anymore, which I now can laugh about because we're many years on and we're all very happy now. But at the time it was
Yeah,
absolutely, my baby wasn't even a year. I was,
yeah,
I was writing a novel. I just launched my very first. I handed in my second. I was writing my third. Life was really full on and busy and chaotic. And I think, probably retrospectively, with a bit of age and a bit of grace, I've worked out he probably felt quite sidelined. And, there was my baby first, my work second, probably my
right.
family next. And then I was kind of assuming he'd be okay and we'd pick up in another 5 years. Terrible idea. Do not do that with husbands. Make sure they know they're important. I think I've heard you on a podcast before saying that it's your
Yeah,
rule to make sure that the couple know they're a couple first.
yeah.
But I didn't do that, and we didn't do that. Anyway, net, at 10 months, we split up. When Conrad was 10 months, we split up. And I didn't go out the house, and I just kind of, looked after my baby. I did go out the house. I went and bought nappies and did the shopping and diapers, forgotten. That's how it
So
went.
many. Yeah.
And did all the things that you're supposed to do, and went to the baby groups, but that was it. It was all about the baby. And one of my friends from one of the baby groups, it was her 30th birthday. And she said, you must come to my birthday party. And I said, no, I don't want to. And I haven't got a babysitter. And she said, oh, no, it's fine. You'll bring your baby to my house. And my babysitter, who's long trusted, will look after the two of them. And I was like, oh, no, I don't think so. I've got nothing to wear. I was still wearing maternity clothes. I wasn't a maternity size. They were not.
I know that life.
But I was just, I
Yeah.
hadn't got out to get changed. And she said, okay, well, we'll look after the baby all day. You go shopping. And then you've got to wear
Sweet deal.
everything.
Yeah.
I couldn't get out of it. And also I sort of owed her the respect of going to her birthday party anyhow, because she was putting this much effort into getting me there. And so I went looking, can I say, knockout in
I
my
believe
very
it.
brand new brown leather trousers, which sounds dreadful. They were kind of these brown flared leather
No,
trousers.
by the way, that's so in.
It was very
Just so you
kind of, it's
know.
back in. I know, I wear them still. I
Mhm.
can wear these.
Yeah,
I will wear
good.
this. Yeah, so I put this all happened like 22 years ago, and it was our meet cute anniversary this month. And I always wear the same outfit, just to remind it. Anyway,
So cute.
so I wore the outfit and I went to this party, and it was literally an eyes across a crowded room moment, which, funny enough, is a line
Is
one
in this movie. Mhm.
Yes, because I do tend to use a little bit of myself in every one of my books.
I know you do.
We'll come on to that. And so, eyes across a crowded room, we all ate the meal, and then we went downstairs into this sort of basement where there was salsa dancing. And my husband's an excellent dancer, very, very good. I'm an enthusiastic dancer, and we were doing really well. And I was still wearing my old wedding rings, largely for nursery school. This sounds so old-fashioned now. It's so weird. But largely because I was still taking my baby to nursery school, and I just kind of hadn't quite brought myself around to being, I'm no longer in the mummy club, as in the mummy club that's married and going to have another baby soon. And at this party, nearly all the other mums announced they were on baby 2. And the babies were like 13 months at that point. And I said, oh, I've got news. I'm divorcing. It was just
good for you.
It was the weirdest party. Anyway, I went downstairs and I was dancing with Jim, and he didn't know all this about me at all. He knew nothing about me. And he said he noticed the rings, and he said, "Oh no, all the best ones are always married." And I literally went,
Get this
pulled
ring
the rings
away.
off, stuck them in my back pocket, and said, "Actually, divorcing." And he went, "Great." And despite that completely bonkers start, so then we had another dance, and then he said, anything else that I need to know? And I went, "No, no. Oh, baby. There's a baby. Yeah."
Yeah.
And he just, again, totally unfazed. He said, "Boy or Gus, boy." And he said, "Name, Conrad." And he went, "What a great name." And he did not skip a beat. He didn't give me all that I was fearful of, that sort of, you might feel that, oh, I don't want to get involved with a woman who's already got a baby.
Right.
He didn't have any
All the fears of
children.
baggage, quote
Yeah,
unquote, for those who are just listening.
and he was just totally in. He was just completely in from get go, and so we were a family from get go. We never had that kind of couple time, so we were a family from get go. But when Conrad spent time with his biological dad, we did have date time, so we did have the sexy fun stuff. Thank God, else I would never have written those 23 novels. How would I
I
have been
mean,
inspired?
can we talk about that for a
We
second? We can
can.
always take it out. I am obsessed with the fact that Adele puts a lot of how should we say, real life situations in her books, even though they are, you know, not not everything that's in the book is reality. There's
Yes.
no there's not, a lot of crazy stuff that's in your life other than the fact that so many saucy, steamy sex scenes which happen to be pulled from real life. And I don't know
Yes.
how else to say it, but I'm obsessed. And my favorite part was the fact that I got to look at Jim and be like, "You did that?" He's like, "Oh yeah, yeah." It's like Mile High Club, huh? And he's like, "Well, I mean, yeah, we got champagne."
We did. We did.
And you
Yeah.
gotta. How do you feel about it? How does he feel about it?
Well, there's one. I mean, I think all my books are quite sexy. They just
They are.
absolutely are.
Yeah.
I think that's because I think sex is really very much part of being an adult. It just is.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. Is it as much of a part of being an adult as paying your mortgage? Don't know. Pretty darn
It should
close.
be.
I mean, yeah, it should be. I mean, I'm pretty, 50-50. I work and I pay my mortgage and I love having sex.
Yeah.
But, I think at the beginning when we first met and we were so young, I mean, I look back and I think it's a minute ago, by the way. It's
Yeah.
all the cliches are so true
Fast.
that time goes so quickly. And we're 22 years later on, and it seems like 10 minutes some days, it literally does. And so when we met, I think he was slightly more experienced than I was, put it that way. Even though I was the one who had been married. And I was more experienced at bringing up babies, but he was
Right.
definitely more experienced at potentially making them. Should we say that?
1,000%. Totally get.
He had kind of a list of firsts that he decided we would tackle. And it was just hilarious.
I love that.
Have you ever done it outside, or the Mile High Club, or I think you can get arrested for most of the things we've done. So
I was gonna say the Mile High Club is like a serious offense.
I don't think it was then. I'm just going to say that to try and make myself sound better.
I'm not saying I don't want to partake. I have not checked that box yet, and I'm jealous. I have to be honest.
I'm not sure you'd get away with it because I think everywhere you move, all eyes are on you. But I think, anyway, lots of places, lots of fun things. And it was so amazing. But at the time I was writing book 4, and book 4 had originally been pitched to my publishers as a book about bigamy, which many, many, many years later I did write. But at the time I rang my publisher up and said, "I'm really sorry. I'm newly separated and I can't imagine writing about bigamy. I can't imagine having one husband, let alone, 2.
Right.
And I just don't want to write about bigamy right now. It's just not working for me." And they said, lovely, lovely posh lady that looked after me in those days said to me, "Of course, darling, I 100% understand. No problem at all. On the other hand, you are contracted and people are waiting. So crack on." So it was so funny and so honest, and it made me giggle. So kind of all I was writing up our dirty dates, which actually I've said that out loud. That should have been what that book was called. So I wrote up these dates, and then I kind of put a story around them. I gave them, I had a woman who was coming through a divorce, but I also had her having a wacky, fun sister, younger sister, who was looking for respectability. And so there was sort of these two fun sisters, very close, but kind of wanting each other's lives. And I wrote up all these dates, and then and I thought, well, you know what, we probably know this is probably just going to burn out. It's probably, you know, an early doors thing. Well, actually, I didn't think that. Other people kept telling me that. I personally thought I'd end up marrying him. I did think that. I really did think it from very early on. But everyone else kept saying, "Oh, it'll burn out," and I thought, well, if it burns
Right.
out,
It's the guy right after. It's a
yeah, it's
Mhm.
a rebound and all that. So I was thinking, oh, so you know, the book, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Anyway, after a year, when they were about to publish the book, I thought, really need to have that conversation with Jim about the fact that every single one of our dates is now in a book. So I gave him the proof to read. And when he finished, he literally said, "You didn't so much as change a t-shirt. You didn't try and disguise me at all." And I was like, you know, I'm very tired. I've got a baby. There's only so much I can do. Anyway, I think he was quite pleased, but there are two funny stories out of the publication of that particular book that is very much about us, and we are very recognizable in it. That one is when my mum read it as a proof. So first of all, well, proof is an arc, an early copy. First of all, you're never meant to think about your mum or your dad when you're writing. And I would pass that advice on to any other young writer out there. Do not think about
Yeah.
them, because parents don't mean to, but they kind of often stop creativity because you become the child around them. And actually, to be a creative, you have to be very adult, and not just to write about sex, but you just have to be an adult to deal with emotions, deal with the world. Anyway, so my mum read it, and she rang me at about 11 o'clock one Sunday night. Now, first of all, when the phone goes at 11 o'clock on Sunday night, I think someone's died.
1,000% agree. I do the same thing. It scares the
Totally.
shit out of me. Yeah.
Completely. Why would anyone ring me? But actually, no, she just had a sherry. I mean, I joke, I say a sherry. It will have been a glass of white wine. But she just had a little glass of white wine so she could get the courage up to say to me, "I've read the book." And I said, "Oh, what did you think of it?" And she sort of giggled and went, "Your Jim's got a pep in his step, doesn't he?"
Ah!
I know, we both have done the same thing. For people who can't see us, we both then covered
Yeah.
our faces, mortified.
Mhm.
Yeah, because the idea of your mum being aware that your boyfriend, as was then, has a pep in
Yep.
his step. But that was one, and the other one was Jim's PA at the time. Jim worked for Universal, I think, at the time. I can't remember. Anyway, he worked, and his PA was a big fan of my writing, and she was so excited. And she read it one weekend, and then came back on the Monday and just said, "We will never speak of it, and you must not look at me for the rest
That's
of the day."
amazing.
Poor girl, poor girl. So yeah,
I think it's great.
yeah. So I'm glad your view of it was that we're fun and lovely. And I think when we were a lot younger, people just thought, too much information. Why are you telling us this?
I think it's fantastic. I really do. I love your outlook on life. And then I also love that that's out there because I don't know. I think it's great. And I think women should be more vocal about the fact that like sex is great. And if you're not having good sex, well,
Move
fix
on.
that. You're
Yeah.
missing out. You
Yeah.
really are. It's a huge part of intimacy. And I will say that over and over and over again. You know, it's just one of those things where it adds to life.
Yes. And it's supposed to. It's supposed
Yeah.
to be a gift. Because if you're not having really lovely, I mean, it's obviously everybody, each to their own. You don't have to be in a relationship at all. You don't have to have sex
Right.
at all. But if you are in a relationship and you want to be having sex, I would think it would be nice if that's lovely sex and it's
Yeah.
really fun and kind and
Yeah.
well,
I mean, and that's
whatever you want it to be.
sure. And I think that's the thing, right? Is like it shouldn't be a chore. You know, it shouldn't feel like it's one-sided. It's when it's right, it's a beautiful blend of confidence and closeness and something that is just I don't know, it's special. And again, it doesn't have to be with a partner that you are with long term or at all. But it is one of those things that I feel like is healthy and it's a huge part about being an adult and a person. And yes, if it's what you want, and really only if it's what you want, it can really add to the zest of life. But when you said, you don't start out, you should never start out writing thinking that your parents might read it.
Mm.
I have a very similar feel of I can't act or decide whether or not to go for a role thinking that my parents might watch it, because they
No.
will. First of all, they will. And also, your son. You think about Conrad. Like, I know his friends at university and whatever they.
Yeah. He didn't
um,
read mine for ages. He
yeah, I
just
mean,
didn't. He just thought it
just
was
avoided
really
it.
embarrassing. Yeah.
Yeah.
All my nieces did. So my nieces, they're your age, and so they were very excited. In fact, they at about 12 or 13 started reading them, and I have to say, girls,
You're like,
honestly,
"Ooh."
you're too
Yeah.
young. Yeah, it's you're not ready for this yet. And they said, well, all our friends are reading them. I thought, because I know
Yeah.
I did that. I know I read Flowers in the Attic way before
Right.
I should have, or Lace, or that kind of thing. But I think with my books, because there's also quite often a psychological issue that goes with with at least one, sometimes several of my characters. That's the other reason I don't think 13-year-olds should necessarily be reading it, because you need a level of maturity to deal with that too. But yeah, don't think about your parents watching you in your films. That's a really good idea.
Yeah. I will say the flip side to what you're saying about them being too young is, at what point should they learn about it? It's one of those things where, like, I almost feel like reading it is the way to learn about it.
Maybe it's better than being in it and never having any idea. Yeah.
Right.
Because my mum, I remember her telling me this, and when I was young and films and things started to become more explicit, I remember her saying to me, I think this is better than it fading to black. And I said, oh, why? Because I was quite surprised that was her view, because she's
Right.
quite religious. She's quite a strict lady. She's, been married 110 years. Not quite, but she has been married 65 years. And she said,
Incredible.
because it doesn't prepare you if it fades to black, which I think probably was her telling me she was not prepared.
Right.
But if you have a bit more knowledge via something sympathetic like a book or a film, so much better than if your only experience of sex, which for lots of children, sadly, is if they see it in porn, which is
Right.
horrifying and shocking, and nobody wants to think that that's the case, but sadly it can
Yeah.
be.
Absolutely.
So maybe I'm being hypocritical saying to my nieces, maybe it was to save
No.
my blushes.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing about, your parents, right? It's like
Yeah.
you see your nieces in a different light because you've seen them since they were
they're babies.
babies. Right. Yeah. It's and it is a different lens, but I have told my parents that I don't know if I want them to see the movie. I know that they will. I just don't want them to see it with me. I say
agree.
that, but then again, here's this weird thing about my parents, is that it's not weird, but it's different, I would say. They were in the entertainment industry as dancers.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom's dad, so my grandfather, didn't want her to be a dancer. He thought of it as essentially
Not
that
quite.
he didn't like the fact that he knew that men would be ogling over her, and he associated it essentially with a stripper.
Yeah.
And that was not the case. She did all sorts of dance, and honestly, I have no issue with strippers, but on top of that, I do get it from like a parent lens, that being a weird thought, right? But my parents always celebrated it in a way, and this, I would say, is the most revealing of things I've done in my career. And so it's a weird point to be in, because I know they will always see me as a child, just like how I look at Hendrix and I'm like, you'll never not be my baby. I know you're going to be 6'9", but you'll never not be my baby. And
they might surprise you.
I think I'll end up watching it with them, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think it'll inevitably happen.
I think it will. And I think they're just going to be so proud and amazed. And I suspect when they watch you, you will just not be Sasha. You will be Zoe and Anna. And that's what they'll see. Because you're so good. You're that good.
You're so nice.
Even convince your parents. I actually think that's what will happen. My parents have now got used to me writing books of this nature. I remember when my dad was, one year when he was president of the golf club, which kind of gives you the
Oh.
setting immediately. That is
Mm-hmm.
such a global setting of understanding. And I went along to some party or other, prize giving thing that he was very proud of. And I think endless sort of men of a certain age came up to me and said, "I've read your book. Who'd have known?" And I just felt awful and really uncomfortable. And actually, my dad was furious with them. His
Yeah.
was like, just don't.
Why?
Just move
Yeah.
on now, please.
That was
Um,
inappropriate. Yeah.
Totally. And then, but things have sort of moved on. I finally did write that book about the bigamist, actually, the one that I didn't write when Conrad was a baby. And the book about the bigamist, she has a sort of husband with stepsons, and she's a good mom, and she's got a job, and she's balancing things, and she's a lovely, lovely, lovely lady, nice neighbor, all of that. And then when she has her other life, she's with this guy who's a little bit younger than her. He's very wealthy, they're child free, and she has a very glitzy life, but she values them equally. And the book, that's the premise of the book. And my mum, at the end of reading that one, said to me, "So which would you choose, Adele?" And I was
Oh,
like,
interesting.
"Oh my goodness, it's my mother." So
Right.
my first thought is not, what is the answer to that? What is the honest answer to that? That is not my thought, because I'm talking to my mum. So my answer is, what would please my mum to hear from me? I'm not
Right.
proud of that,
Yeah.
Sasha, but that is what the
No, I
thought
mean,
process in my head.
I
So
get
then
it.
I said, oh, well, obviously, Mark, he's the dad, and because they have children and there's responsibilities. And I just think that that would be the better choice for her. And my mum said, "Really? I would choose the much enjoyed man," which made me laugh so
Wow.
much. I love that phrase, the much enjoyed man, because I don't think we ever think about men being enjoyed. We think about
Right.
women being enjoyed, even to look at, she's
Right.
beautiful to look at. And, with this phrases, isn't there? Sight for sore eyes, and all the things we say of women that, they look great and we enjoy them. Their clothes are fun and better, and they're just more exciting
Right.
to be around, to look at. But my mum had sort of suggested to me the idea of enjoying, and this is very recently, when she was 80, which made me giggle
I
a
love
lot.
it.
God love
Yeah.
her. Hmm. So when she says, "Well, I don't know where you get your ideas from," maybe it's her.
Maybe. Yeah. That is so
Secretly.
interesting. I love that. I've spoken to a lot of my friends about the transition of like when that time where your parents aren't quite your parents anymore. And there's a certain age that you get where for some people it's like they start hearing their parents swear. My parents swore my whole childhood and I loved it. I knew that I couldn't until I was older. I never had any issues with it when I was a kid, but I loved that. I saw them for who they were for the most part. But like as you get older, certain things get revealed to you.
Mm.
Some aren't negative. Your parent, you find out that your parents aren't always right about everything. Um,
I
but
think
it is such a fun stage. I think
yeah,
I much prefer it. I much prefer,
I
yeah,
think my parents, I think they were always quite exposed, really. I think I knew who they were, whether they wanted me to or not. I think I knew who
yeah.
they were. And I don't think they made much of an effort to pretend to be something different around us,
I think
me
that's
and
a
my
good thing.
sister. Yeah, I think it really was because, I'm very, very lucky both my parents are still with me and they're much adored. But I do also know they have their faults and they
Yeah,
know I have mine. And so we're all very, and so when I had Conrad, who we are so close, we just adore each other. And but I made it very clear to him all the way along that I make mistakes and I
yeah,
get things wrong. And I'm quick to apologize if we've had a row or I've said something I shouldn't say. And I never wanted to be that mother that had all the answers. And
right.
because I don't have them. And I knew if I pretended to have them, I would be actively lying to him. And I suppose because our relationship from him being very little was a little bit different because there was kind of me at home and, first there wasn't Simon. And for a while there wasn't Jim. And obviously Jim came along very quickly. But by the time he became dad, Conrad was, a few years older. But Conrad we've always had this deal. We will tell each other the absolute truth. Ah, my gosh, that's in the book /
Yeah.
film. That's in your film. So yeah, I do put myself in it even more than I think. So I have this thing about it being really important to be truthful if you want to be known. And I also
I
believe
love that.
it's really fine not to be truthful, but you cannot complain about not being known. So if you are not truthful, you will be lonely, because you will be, because you are not allowing people in. So being truthful quite often means you have to say, well, I was in the wrong there, or I was bad-tempered, or, you know, I made a silly mistake, or whatever it might be, or I made a dreadful mistake. But I think it has to be said. And I also don't think anything is, you know, one extreme or the other, where people tend not to be entirely good or entirely evil. People are a blend, and they're messy. So I wanted Conrad to know that I knew that about myself. So when he went through it, it would be okay, because actually I am okay. You know, I don't want to sound braggy, because it's not very British, but I'm more than okay. You know, I've done really well. I've done really well by being honest.
And you should celebrate it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted him to know that. So we do have very, very honest conversations, and he does sometimes tell me so much I can't have to go, stop, remember I'm your mum. And he goes,
I don't necessarily want to hear that.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You're right. Okay. I just sometimes, and I don't believe in that. I'm not his best friend. I'd be quite sad if I was his best friend, because I think he should have friends that are way funner than I am. And I know fun is not.
You are so fun.
Thank you.
You are so fun.
I think
from experience,
23-year-old guy, he needs 20. You know, he needs other people that are more fun than I
know what you're saying.
But so I'm not his best friend, but I want to be the person he can be most honest with, and I want to teach him to be honest with women, because I would love him to have a really, you know, he happens to be heterosexual. Can I say I would say the exact same thing if he wasn't? I want him to have whatever relationship he has, but I want it to be the most honest it can possibly be, because he will support his wife better if he can tell her who he really is, and she can be who she really is with him. I think that'll be the greatest relationship, you know.
Absolutely. Yes to all of it. I really do feel the same way with raising kids. A little bit, because yes, my parents, I would say, were very similar in that way, but I really do think that there's a better connection, like you were saying, with people when you're truthful, but specifically with your kid. You know, I think we make a really big point, even though he's just, you know, a toddler right now, to, like you said, apologize quickly. Mom and dad, we can be wrong. We're sorry. You know, it's so important for kids, I think, to know that their parents are not perfect from a young age. We all make mistakes. Yes, it's okay. And if we hurt somebody, or if we did the wrong thing, you know, you apologize for it. You're open about it, and everybody moves forward. And being accountable for your actions is crucial.
We do ask a lot from our kids, and I realized at one point when Conrad was quite young, I was actually asking more from him than I was asking of myself. So I was asking for this kind of, hey, you should go and make friends with people you probably don't want to be friends with. You know how you push your kids into groups and sports, and try this, try that, try the other. And I remember thinking when he was about 9, wow, what are my hobbies? Because I'm always making him try something new.
Try something new. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was, you know, try new food, try new friends, all that. And so we do ask a lot of our kids. So I think all we can do is admit we've been through it, and we know it might not be perfect. Can I say though, Sasha, whatever you are doing with your child, your parenting, it is perfect.
I don't know about that, but
it must be, if the result is that child, because he is literally heaven on earth. I'm saying that, and honestly, we were so blown away. Conrad felt, I think, for the first time in his life, genuinely, he should have felt threatened, because it was the first time in his life that I was like, hey, I met a kid that I actually think really I might like as much as I like you.
That's
he's
so
pretty
cute. He's
good.
like, what?
Well,
Excuse
actually,
me?
he's a very mature child, and I think now he can kind of go, "Yes, well, that's fine, Mum, because that'd be how you have to be when you have grandchildren." So we're
Right.
all good.
Yeah.
But seriously,
It's
whatever you're doing it well.
Thank you. I mean, I am incredibly biased, obviously, so I'm going to say, yeah, he is
He's
the most
perfect.
incredible little thing. Yeah,
He
it's just
is.
so wild to see, yourself and your partner running around and this
Yeah.
little thing. But he really is a joyful kid.
Yeah.
Like Hudson and I said the other day, he like he'll hurt himself, he'll fall, trip, whatever. He's very boisterous, like most toddlers are. But he'll fall and he'll start to cry, and he'll do this thing where he like will try and feel better. And we looked at ourselves and we were like, I hope he doesn't feel like he has to recover fast. So we've
Oh,
been going through this thing where we're like, it's okay to be sad. It's okay, like you were saying earlier, right? To show your emotions. It's okay. And I think he just really has this tendency of like, I want to get back to fun. I want to get back to,
correct.
he's so joyful. He wants to hug everybody.
Yeah.
He wants to be involved. And I
He's
think
so
those are the little
unspoiled.
things.
He's so unspoiled, and that was the joy
Oh,
for us because he could be spoiled. He has these two devoted, adoring parents. He hasn't got any other siblings.
yeah.
You're all in the limelight all the time. Oh well, he's not. I know you protect him
Yeah.
very much,
I
but
know what you mean
he
though. Yeah.
he gets to do glitzy things that other kids. He could be so spoiled. He is a delight. I
Oh,
adore him.
thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I want to reiterate that like we focus on not like making sure that he feels comfortable to express all those feelings and whatever. But it's so interesting to see him do that from so little.
yeah,
He literally is the kid that chooses joy.
yes,
He's when he's complaining or he's upset, it truly is because there's a reason. And kids are so fascinating, like you're saying, we expect so much from them. And I think they in turn also they know so much more. They're capable of so much more than we think that they are.
hmm,
And it's beautiful to watch him like figure stuff out. He's done that from such a young age where he likes to figure out how something works and he likes to take it apart and put it back together. And
oh,
I'm just so like I'm like we all are. We're just so proud of our kids.
yeah,
But I think there's so much information out there too now, which I thoroughly appreciate. Where you got child psychologists on social media telling you things that you might not know, and it is those things, right? Making sure that your kids know that they can feel whatever they're feeling, and then
yeah,
how to process them
yeah,
and how to not take it out on other people. And it's amazing that you can start laying that groundwork now when they're this little. And
mm,
that's what I mean by like what they're actually capable of,
yeah,
like it's like I taught him this, maybe I said it like once or twice, maybe three times max. He was having he was really upset about something, and I was like, okay, we'll breathe in and out through your nose. And I will watch him. He will do that. He'll get really upset about
oh,
something and he'll stop and he'll,
oh, bless her.
and he feels better. And I'm just shocked that this little human
But isn't that great? You
understands.
made him feel better. You've
Right.
given the tools for him to make himself feel better, even better.
And that is, one of the things that we can just try and do and see if it works. But
Should I tell you
he
one?
just gets it.
Should I tell you one where my parenting backfired on one of those like moments?
Sure.
So when Conrad was probably about a similar age, so he was 3 and a bit or something, and we were at somebody's house, and everybody was having food, and there was kids sort of food that you could pick at, little sausages and this
Mm-hmm.
one thing and another. And Conrad piled a load of sausages on his plate, like 4 or something. The mini ones, but there was 4 on his plate. And I thought, he's not going to get through 4, but he's done it now. He's touched them, fine. So I kind of pointed that out. I said, oh, wait, let's see you eat those first, and then
Right.
before you have anything else. Anyway, they vanished quite quickly. And I thought, oh, I'm so wrong. But then he didn't eat any more sausages. And as I was leaving, I saw the sausages squeezed into the sort of carpet next to the chair.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, you didn't like the sausages? Like, no. So I had to then, scoop up the sausages, explain that we're going to say sorry, we're going to clean the carpet and all the rest of it. And he had an absolute meltdown. And he very rarely did. The reason I can remember this is I think he only had about 3 meltdowns I can remember. But he had I realized he was embarrassed. He was humiliated that I'd drawn attention to it, and everyone else knew, and there was a load of kids there. And as we left, I said, oh, there's a way around this. If you put something in your plate and you don't like it, or even if somebody offers you something and you don't want it, you can just say, thank you very much. I've tried it, but I don't like it. And he said, okay. So we settled down. I heard those words about 2,500 times in the next 2 years. Every single thing I feel in my memory, I served up to him. He said, thank you very much. I've tried it, but I don't like it. And I think I'd even said, oh, nobody will push it on you. So then I had to kind of go,
swallow those words. I will say, I'm glad that you brought up food, because that literally is our struggle with him. It's the thing that we struggle with the most, is him trying new foods, it's not even new foods. We're just like trying to get him to eat something that's not like 3 things. He's got 3 things that he eats, and it's the hardest thing. And I know there are so many parents that go through it. I'm not alone. And apparently that's how I was when I was younger. I was extremely picky with food. But I look at him and I'm like, you could literally have the best food. I am offering you, I don't care if you could have a filet mignon at a restaurant. I don't care. I will pay it just for you to eat something else that is not this like kids protein shake or like a peanut butter bar. I'm like, you need to eat, more things. That is the only thing that is so frustrating. But, I'll take that.
Also, he will grow out of it.
Yeah, I know.
He genuinely will. Conrad was exactly the same. Now, Conrad has lived all over the world. He's lived in Russia. He's lived in Spain. He studies languages at university. He's currently in Brazil.
Incredible.
He's lived in Mexico. He eats any of the local cuisine. I never hear that food's bad. He tries anything. But for years, in fact, it was quite funny. At school, one day his headmaster rang me up and said, Conrad's eating so poorly. We've actually asked him to be part of the menu planning, which was so sweet of the school, that they were kind of going,
wow,
on Monday, we're going to get him to sit in the kitchens and discuss the food and make him feel involved, so that when the food comes, he's going to eat it, which
that's
was
incredible.
Adorable. Absolutely incredible. So he said, but it might not work. And I said, why might it not work? And he said, well, we sat him down and we said, what kind of things do you like as a starting point? And apparently at this point, 5, Conrad turned around and said, sirloin steak, sushi, and smoked salmon. And he said, so clearly our budget at school isn't going to cover those. And I said, no, just offer him sausages, because by then he did eat sausages. And I was like, he's just doing an S day. And I'd worked out he really had just in his head thought, oh, what can I think of? And so they went back and said, would you eat sausages or salad? And he said, I would. And it just turned out to be this really strange thing that he had chosen, that he would only eat food with a certain letter every day.
That is so hilarious.
Also really frustrating. But also he did, again, grow through it. And it was fine. But thank you to the school, who were very supportive.
That's so cute. Oh my gosh, I've got the best nieces and nephews. My one nephew is extremely picky. So much better now. Now he's the same way. He's trying all sorts of things and has a full range of things that he eats. But I remember when he was Hendrix's age, he was eating like frozen waffles and like still frozen chicken tenders, cooked through, obviously. And these like little like Nutri-Grain bars. That was it. He would not touch anything else.
Yeah, and sometimes worry, because you want the protein, you want the vitamins,
of course,
to grow. Yeah,
and you go to the pediatrician, and they're like, "So what is he eating now?" And they grill you, and you got to like put everything that and you find yourself going, "I'm just gonna fucking lie," because I don't want to hear it. I'm like, he's huge, he's growing, he's not,
it's fine.
Yeah, his bowel movements are fine. He's not deficient in anything. Like he is a giant and is developing in all the ways that he should. And I'm just gonna lie.
It's so
because I don't want to deal with it.
I think, I really wish if I had like a million lives and I could just do lots of things, because I love writing. So that's my first job.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's now films, and I love that. But I also wish I could just go around to all young moms and hug them and go, it will be fine. Yeah. I promise you, it will be fine. Because I spent so many hours worrying about everything, whether I'd got him the right pram, whether he was going to get curvature of the spine because I'd had him
Yeah.
sitting in a car seat for too long because my parents lived so far away and I was up and down the motorway so often. And, I had so many worries. Was he deaf? Was his speech coming the right time? Was he just ignoring me? I just couldn't work it out. I really couldn't work it out.
Probably the latter. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And he's turned out to be this absolute joy of a human being. As, by the way, the point being, everyone's kids are. People always think that about their own kids. Oh, obviously there's some oddities and some difficulties and all that. That's all normal too. But I would like to say to people, don't worry. I was at a lunch the other day and there was a load of mums who were sort of a decade younger than I am, and they were all going through the teen thing. And I was like, yeah, that stinks. But it's, again, something you will get through, and it's true. We all do. Just enjoy it. Just enjoy it.
Exactly. Just trying to find the joys and focusing on those. Yeah. But ultimately, I think, at least most of us just want to raise a successful human in whatever capacity, like whatever that means. And I think that's what's cool about having a kid this young right now, the way that society is. There's a plethora of problems and issues, but I think we are making really decent progress in some areas, mental health being one of them, and really trying to understand the way that their brains develop and how, obviously kids are different and they learn different, and how do you work with that and make them successful in whatever they want to, achieve.
I've heard you talk about mental health before on your podcast, and there is a very different view for Americans generally. Going to therapy is so much more accepted and acceptable, and it is becoming that way in the UK, which is fantastic. But when I very first started writing, that came out of a quest to help my mental health, as when I first became published. So what happened is I always wanted to be a writer, going right back to that very beginning and saying I wanted it from a kid. I didn't go down that path because how do you? I had no idea how to become a writer, so to speak. So I had other jobs and worked in marketing. I worked as a management consultant in a management consultancy. And then very horrendously, considering I was only in my late 20s, we had lots of deaths in the family in a very short time, and close friends. And even my PA, who was 21 and I had a terrible cancer, and there was all sorts of things, very, very short time. And I chose to go and see a counsellor. And at the time, people couldn't understand it at all. They sort of thought,
what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there was something wrong with me. I was grief-stricken. But they really thought what was wrong with me and sort of how are we going to fix you, so to speak. Anyway, it was interesting out of the counselling, many, many things actually, but one of them that changed my life is the counsellor did say to me, you need to find something that you are in charge of and you are in control of that makes you happy. Nothing that's dependent on your partner, your family, your future kids, whatever it might be, just you. She said, it can be very small, Adele. It can be baking a cake. It could be painting a picture, taking a photograph. What is it? Have a think. And I said, and this was on the back of me saying I would never be happy again. I was so seeped in grief and that sort of thing. And I said to her, well, actually, I do these scribbles. I used to want to be a writer and I have these books that I scribble in. And she said, oh, what sort of books? And I rushed to my handbag and sort of showed her my notebook that I had with me. And she flicked through it and said, how many of these have you got, Adele? And I said, oh, I don't know, maybe 20. And she said, this might be a little bit more than scribbling. And you should do more of it. If that brings you the joy, you should do more of it. And interestingly, within the year, because I heard in my head, oh, you should go off and write your novel that you've always been talking about. Within the year, I sort of reprioritized my life to give myself that time and space and self-respect to write. Yeah. And writing turned out to be so healing for me. But I wouldn't have even found that, wouldn't have even got to that if it hadn't been for the counselling. So that's a very long thought that just on the back of your thought about mental health, how we are all a work in progress. We all are all the time and always should be growing and learning and changing. And so yeah, that kind of helped me get there. So it is good that we're giving our kids those opportunities early doors.
Absolutely. And I love that. I love that you're also open to talking about that. And I think that's the thing, is that I think so many people misunderstand what counseling or therapy is.
Completely.
We've been taught, like I said, what's wrong with you? And the thing is like you said, we all have something that's wrong with us.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
needs to be rephrased, because life is hard and
Mhm.
oftentimes really shitty. And the way through progress, becoming a better person, becoming a better,
Resilient.
wife, employee, mother, whatever it is that you want to do, just person in general, starts with working on yourself.
Mm.
Because it is not possible to suppress it your entire life without hurting yourself or hurting others. Maybe
Yeah.
you can do it. People always feel like they have to be strong, right? And for whatever reason, that's our version of strength. But without processing it, we can never get better, and we end up leaving a trail of misery in
Yeah.
whatever capacity. And that, to me, it's so frustrating that it's looked at as bad, when ultimately the people that you're seeing are really just trying to help give you tools to make
Totally.
yourself better.
Yeah.
It's not scary. The scary part is maybe for ourselves, having to process things that maybe we don't want to talk about. That's what's scary.
Yeah.
But it's not inherently um
Reading.
something to fear. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I think people,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it is. And it's funny you saying it's good you're open to it. Years ago, because I've always told people when they say, "How did you get published?" I say, "Well, funnily enough, I've got this one woman to thank, and she is thanked in my very first book. She's acknowledged in my acknowledgements as a big thank you." So I've been very public about it, and in every single one of my talks, right from get go, I would say that this was my process and how it worked, and I think that is so important that people know that you can talk to somebody. They can give you tips and help and
Mm-hmm.
tools to become resilient, to become better, to become wiser, if that's not too
Yeah.
old fashioned a word,
No.
so that you can keep growing. Because actually, I learned all of that, 20, will be sort of 25 years ago, that first conversation happened. And it's still something that resonates with me now. So I do I tell that story all the time, because I would like people to go and find their little piece of joy that they are in charge of.
Yeah. I think what's also so important about that is the fact that I feel like we often choose the wrong people to talk to about our lives, or we're so worried that people are going to judge us by what we're saying. The closest friends that we have, it still feels sometimes that maybe I shouldn't say it, or I don't want to say it, or I'm afraid of the consequences if I speak my truth for whatever reason, whatever that is. It's so wonderful to be able to go to somebody and know that, I mean, they're going to have their own thoughts about it, but they are going to be they don't know anybody else in the situation. They're going to be professional, and they're going to be unbiased as best as
Neutral.
they can be. Somebody that is neutral, that doesn't know anything else, you could tell them lies if you wanted to. It's not going to help you, but you could tell them anything, and they are there to listen. And sometimes that's all it is. Sometimes the
Yeah.
best part is being able to tell somebody that is not going to say anything else, and be
I think
able to let things out and vent.
Yeah,
You know what I
because I
mean?
think the thing about telling friends as well, it's actually quite an odd burden to tell you. I mean, I actually think you should be able to talk to your friends and be honest with them.
Yeah.
But actually, quite often, if you share something with a friend, you are asking them to take on some of your pain. You
Right.
are, and they may or may not feel ready for that day. I've had the situation both ways. I've been the person who's doing the talking and the person who's doing the listening, where
Same. Yeah.
often two female friends, is usually two female friends, are meeting. Say we're meeting for lunch, and you're meeting for lunch, and you're kind of there, can't wait for it to be exciting and giggly and light. And the other person wants it to be deep and dark because they have a
Right.
problem, or I'm the one wanting it to be deep and dark because I have a problem. And actually, so one or the other of you leaves thinking, I wasn't ready for that today, and now that's affected my mood. It's
Right.
not really fair. And equally, the thing about friends is they're not professional and trained. They don't have all the solutions. You can resent them if they don't have the answers. You can resent them if they bring it up again, when you're not feeling like talking about it, you
Right.
can believe that their actions, their relationship with you has changed, whether it has or it hasn't. You have your own lens again to look at that. So I think it's just putting a lot of weight onto
Yeah.
something that should just be quite lovely. Friendship should be quite lovely. Although my friends over the years, God love them, have heard loads about me and vice versa. And there's
Yeah.
also some real healing to be done when you know you're ready to talk to friends as well. That's a great thing too. It doesn't have to be
Truly, I
either or.
agree. Right, agreed. And also, the thing that I would also like to mention about that is that most of the time, your friends are biased. And
Yes.
so they either tell you what you want to hear or they maybe agree with you when they shouldn't. And that can add to a negative situation. I know this happens a lot with relationships too, where it's you're seeing somebody, your friends um, think that they're bad for you, or they don't know yet. You tell them something bad about your partner, and then they can
That's what they
never.
remember.
Right,
Yeah.
and they can never look at that person differently, which, and sometimes they shouldn't, but a lot of times, relationships are hard and you go through ups and downs, and if you've worked together on something as a couple, but your friends and your community around you think
Yeah.
they hold on to that negative situation, it makes things really
Of
messy
course.
and complicated. And it's not that the same thing, right? You can have both. It's not that I don't think that you should do it. I think it's extremely important to have people around you that you can trust,
Mm.
and that you can set boundaries with, whatever that may be. I know, a lot of my friends, my close friends, we have such open communication in the way of, I think they would not, I think they have said, like, man, I can't hang out today. I need to focus on my mental health, self-care or whatever that is. Or, you know, um, outwardly saying when we start hanging out, I just need to like relax, or I just need to vent, or whatever it is, having that mutual understanding and heads up, I guess, if you will,
Yeah.
about what they need or what they expect or what they can handle. And I think we shouldn't be afraid to say that to our
Yeah.
friends. Ultimately, what you need in a situation or would like in a situation, and then you let your friends respond in whatever manner they might need to, based on what they're dealing with, and
I
that
am
sort of thing.
laugh
But
I am
I'll go
laughing to
for it.
myself about the complete opposite to that situation where, because I spend my entire time telling everyone how perfect Jim is, and let's face it, you've added to that today.
I have,
But
yeah.
you have, and can I say you're not alone in that? I have this joke that people, if they meet me first, they always, I'm lucky, not always, but often really like me, and we get on really well, and it's great, and everything's going wonderfully. And then they meet Jim, and they think, I like him more. And can I say
Oh my
that's so
gosh.
frustrating? But and I'm sort of joking because obviously I like him more. I wouldn't have chosen him. I have to be with me. I chose him. But I always joke that it's true of even my mum. And I repeated this joke in front of my mum the other day, and she sort of paused and went, "Oh, I suppose I should say no," which was so funny because she was still
Oh my
teasing me.
gosh.
But she was still teasing me. I know she was because
Yeah,
she's
of
adorable.
course.
Um, but my friends have quite categorically told me, many of them, that if I ever divorce Jim or we split up, they're going with him. They get
Oh,
him in the
they get
divorce.
him in the divorce.
Yeah, marvelous. And I did really well out of the first divorce in terms of friendship groups. So I am
Yeah,
likely to lose all my assets if I ever divorce Jim. Just
that's
saying.
hilarious.
So yeah, so I can't. I'm the opposite. I can't complain about Jim to any of my friends. If I try and complain about him, people
They
just
don't
look.
believe you?
No, they don't believe me. They just got, he's a saint. And I'm
I
like,
mean,
well,
that's not right either.
no, I know. And I'm like,
Uh,
well, he's kind of, he's great. But, and they're like, no, he's a saint and we don't want to discuss anything other than he's a saint.
Hilarious. I think
But you
that's,
admit he is pretty saintly. Everyone,
I mean, he is, but
yeah,
I feel like
he's,
I don't, but the problem, no, I'm going to be real here too, is that I don't have, like, I would never be like, I like Jim Moore, not just because I'm talking to you right now, but I think you guys are very different, but you complement each other
we
so
do.
well.
Yeah. I'm the
And the
fun
things
one.
that you're similar on,
Yeah.
I mean, you're both saintly. I would say that
Oh,
you're way feistier than Jim outwardly,
I
but
know.
I love that about you.
Oh,
I love that about you.
thank you.
but I also relate to that because I feel like Hudson is definitely the less sassy in the relationship. He's gotten sassier as we've gotten older. And I'm here for that. I fully support it. But I think that's it too. You know what I mean? Like I feel like you and I are more likely to say something that might be a little more risky than
Yes,
Jim and Hudson.
correct.
Um, but yeah, it is interesting when you've been together for a very long time, like you have with Jim, and I have been with Hudson, or at least known him for a very long time. It's one of those things where a lot of people can't see you isolated from each other.
Hmm.
And I think that's also part of it. It's like you and
Yeah.
Jim go together, Hudson and I go together, and it's hard to picture the one without the other, which I think is a good and a
Yeah,
bad thing,
I think
you
I
know?
agree, and I totally agree. And also I've built my life, and you've built your life to make that even more the case.
Yeah.
We work together. We both work from home. We have offices next door to each other. We do joint creative processes.
It's
Um,
very lucky.
it's incredibly lucky. It's
Yeah.
incredibly lucky to have so much time together. So I don't really want to change it. And I'm not
Yeah.
risking losing all my friends in the divorce. Just saying that.
Right.
Rude. Rude.
Cherry on the
Rude.
top. No.
To them, I do say to them, you'll find it boring without me to hate.
I would agree with that. But same boat still, Hudson and I 24/7. And, COVID was an interesting thing because Hudson and I were like, well, nothing changed for us. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
So
Yeah.
many people had a hard time with their relationships because they were spending so much time together.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, some relationships are built for a certain type of lifestyle, others aren't. I'm so lucky and thankful and wouldn't change the fact that we get to spend so much time together.
Exactly.
It really works for us. It's great that we can have careers that are in the same vein, that just kind of complement each other, and just,
Mm.
building something together is really special. And I think Hudson does a really good job of building me up without the connection. Like
Yes.
making sure that I'm always consistently growing as a person, isolated from him, which is, I think, extremely respectable, and not necessarily something that's easy to do. And I constantly try and do the same, but it's interesting, the dynamic, based on the fact that I'm generally the face of something,
Yeah.
and he's supporting that, which I feel like Jim is in the same way, doing the
100%.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if they weren't the type of people that they are, it would be a much different relationship. It would be
It
very hard.
would. And I think the world is still getting used to the
Yeah.
fact that it's this way around for the genders, because
Right.
everyone accepts that phrase, behind every great man is a
Right.
stronger woman, and everyone
Uh-huh.
gets that, and we all absolutely know that's true. And we all do know that the fact that there are many, many, many successful men in our histories, and you scratch the surface and you go, oh, look at the partners, look at their sisters, look at their
Right.
mothers, look at the women in their world. But people are not as comfortable with looking at strong women and saying the men supported. They are
Right.
slightly negative, interestingly, about both the woman and the man. They sort of fall into a trap of thinking they must be a bit henpecked. We've heard that, henpecked, weak. We've
Right.
heard Jim at the school gate being asked by a school mum, when are you going to get a
Uh,
real job?
oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, hilariously. He's quite funny though, because he turned around and said, well, the day after you, because I think this is my real job,
Right.
um, because nobody would say to a woman, I hope, when are you going to get a real job, if she was mothering full time and not working away from home? You would say that
Right.
was a very worthwhile, important job. But for some reason, and that's not what Jim was doing anyway, he had other jobs, but they assume that's what he was doing, and they gave him a hard time for it. And I think that's so interesting. And I was thinking about the word support, because I always use the word that Jim supports me, and you've used it today. But I wonder, I'm trying to find a new word that it's a bit more than, he's almost a catalyst for a lot of things. It's not just the
Yeah.
support. It's not,
It's a driving
he is the
force. I don't know what.
foundation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm going to have a think about that. I am meant to be a wordsmith. I'll give that some thought, and I'll let you know, Sasha.
Please
I
do,
will,
because
I
I
will
feel like
pop
we'll
that.
connect on that word.
Yeah, exactly. But we
Yeah.
need a proper word for what they do, because it's really important.
It really is. And I would also second the assumption of Hudson's position. People do the same thing. And even if it was just a stay-at-home dad, I wouldn't be able to function without that, you know? It's
Yes,
so much more than that.
exactly.
And it's vital to everything that I do. I think that I have seen that actually on social media, this growing, whether it's like dads doing, you know, videos, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or whatever it is, of their lives as stay-at-home dads. And
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
I love that. So I do think that people are getting more and more used to the idea. But again, that isn't Hudson's. Yes, he's always home,
Agreed. Yeah.
as far as home being, you know, with us. Um, but he carries like 8 job descriptions.
Yes.
And it's how we function. It's the only way that we can function. And it's
And that's
I
actually a
never
joy.
want to be, yeah, it is. It's a joy. And I never want to feel like we have to justify that.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it shouldn't be something that we have to, okay, well now let's explain what Hudson does. You know what I mean? It's so stupid, but it is. It's exactly what it is. It's like it's the double standard there.
I think it's
And I'll
actually
fight it.
just because people are not used to it yet. And
Yeah.
I think as it becomes more of the norm, it'll be talked about less. The way I guess a few generations ago, women working at all
Right.
was talked about because it was shocking. And
Or
as
showing
time
their
goes,
ankles, you know.
yes, go back
We've come a
again,
long
another
way.
generation. Yeah, exactly. Things change for the good, as you said. There's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's fascinating. But as long as we're always going in the right direction, which I really, you know, I hope we are. I feel like so many good things are happening, and I think we forget to talk about that too. And I find a lot of comfort in venting about it because I think that is the way forward. A lot of the time is bringing things to light. But I do need to remember that we do need to celebrate those victories. Um, but yeah, one step at a time. People like
Yes.
you, thanks to people like you that are not only living it, but you're writing it, you're sharing it, and I think it's so important. And I'm again just honored that I got to be a part of the first movie that you do. It's so
Oh,
exciting.
I will
It's
never get
so
over this
exciting.
year. What a year we've had. It's
Yeah,
just, I can't wait. And I can't wait for it to come out and we can talk about it all the time to everybody.
I know. I can't
I
wait to
mean,
talk about it all.
everything, I
The
know. I know. It's very twisty turny. We can say that. And because it's very
Yeah,
twisty turny, we're both being really careful about what we're
we're
saying.
being very good. I'm
We're
very
being very
proud of
good.
us.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. But both characters that I play are equally fun in their own way. And it was just so fun to be able to create, like, you know, a different way of walking and a different tone of voice and a different reaction to, you know,
Absolutely
basic
extraordinary.
things. It was just so fun.
So
It was
talented.
so fun. And our whole cast, and our entire crew, everybody that we filmed with in Utah was just extraordinary.
100%.
Um, what a team. Couldn't have done it without each and every person. It really was, I feel like, an act of love in
It
every
really
department.
was. It
Yeah.
really was. It was, yeah, we loved it.
Yeah.
We could say that
I
for a long time.
We can, and I can also say that this is the first time. It definitely shouldn't be considering other things that I've done in my career, but this was the first time I had an intimacy coordinator, and this it was very much needed for this movie. But I love that I experienced a lot of new things, you know, in
Yes.
working on this film, and I think I even though it was just really a little over a month, I understand myself better after playing those 2 characters.
Wow.
And I'm so like I'm just thankful for that. And I do feel that even after jobs that like I didn't necessarily thoroughly enjoy, whether it's the experience or the character. I'm lucky to not have had a lot of those, but even those you learn more about yourself and that sort of thing. But I really do feel like I've connected with myself so much better after playing Anna and
That's
Zoe and that
amazing.
experience. I credit it to a lot of, you know, different ways of thinking and what have you, and learning about myself. So I thank you for that. Um, in that,
Wow.
and
That's
just in
really
that, you
cool.
know, so worth it. But I do think people are going to have a lot of fun watching this.
I do too. I can't wait to hear what they think of you. Amazing. What do you think of it?
Yeah, hopefully good things. Hopefully they're
It will be good.
I'm not going to say it. I don't want to ruin anything.
Can't say
But
anything.
it really is so fun. It was just the best. And I'm so glad that I got that you and Jim are now lifelong friends. We're just so lucky in that
100%.
situation. I do have a question that I ask everybody.
Always ask. Yep.
I always ask, which is, what makes you feel sexy?
Now, I wanted to ask you about this, because that's a different question to what do I find sexy, isn't it?
Did I say find?
No, you said feel.
No, yeah. What makes you feel? Yeah, I was like, wait, I always say feel.
You asked the right question. You asked the right question. But it's interesting. I love that question. That's what I was drawing attention to. I love the fact you want to know what feels sexy for me, not what I find attractive about someone else. And I love that. Yeah. It was interesting because I discussed this with Jim, because I listen to your podcast anyway. So I said to Jim, she will ask me this question. And he sort of started telling me all these things that he thinks I find attractive. I said, that wasn't the question, which is really interesting. Okay, so what makes me feel sexy? A couple of things. Well, actually, loads. I should say, first of all, and I think this is encouraging to women, because I am 54, loads of things still.
You don't act or look 54. I just want to put that out there for people that are just listening.
Probably
you can't tell by her sexy voice.
Probably because of the thing I'm now about to say, which is, I think people assume you get to an age where you just, you're over it, and you don't feel as sexy. That hasn't been the case for me. Now, totally respect if it is the case, marvelous. But for me, and I've been thinking about it. Why am I still feeling sexy? And I think it's because I feel good about myself. So I feel fulfilled and I feel creative and exciting. And that's when I feel sexy. So I don't care if my hair's done or I'm in a good outfit or if I've had a bath or all those things. I mean, those things are nice and they can definitely add to it and make me feel va-va-voom. But if I've had a day where I know I've knocked it out the park and I've written something brilliant, or I've had a great meeting and we've got a great cover, and when we were on set and we know we'd had a fantastic day filming, and I think, look what's happening, look at this world I'm living in, look what's being made in front of my very eyes. That makes me feel very sexy, because it makes me feel as though I have a really strong position in the world and a role in the world, and I'm here, bang, look at me. And I think everybody should be entitled to feel, I'm here, bang, look at me. Everybody should feel that. They don't have to write a book or make a film. That's really fabulous. I do. But they should have a moment where they go, wow, this is my thing. So for me, I feel sexy if I feel noticed for what I've achieved. So it might be a joke. If somebody says to me, you're really funny, that makes me feel quite sexy. If somebody says, I read your book and it was really interesting, I think, aha. So I think I was kind of scraping that back and thinking, what does that really mean? And I think it's to do with confidence. So I think confidence makes me feel sexy. Yeah. Very, very, very long answer.
No, I loved it.
It's also good.
That is.
But I mean, that's a lot shorter, that answer.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
But yeah.
Also true. I think that was my favorite answer yet. No offense to anybody else, because again, it's a personal thing. But I think your answer was my favorite answer.
Oh,
yeah. I think confidence is massive. And I think, like you said, you've got multiple things. I would agree. I think different things make me feel different ways of sexy. But that one, I think, is probably the most constant, is feeling confident.
Yeah.
It hits differently. It really does. It really does.
And it's, you sort of, if you're feeling confident, you're sort of thinking, you're so lucky you're going to get to sleep with me now. Which is a great vibe to bring, can I say?
It is so true.
Vibe to bring, rather than, oh, I'm so lucky that I'm sleeping with you. Although, equally,
equal for sure,
ways, of course. But I quite like that little vavavoom moment when I think I've just done something that I value and I'm feeling confident.
Yeah, and that you value about yourself. I love that.
Hurrah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's a great answer. That's yeah.
Well, it was a
And I
great
think we
question.
should also always aspire to do that, because ultimately that means that we've done something that we love. And
Yes.
like you said, whether it's a joke or something much bigger than that, both
Yeah,
are just as important as the other. And I
absolutely.
totally wait, hold on, I totally forgot to ask that this will be the last thing. You got honored by the Queen.
I did. Hurrah. The late Queen Elizabeth.
I know, I know.
She gave me so in the UK during World War One, history lesson, you asked for it, it's coming. Sorry, people.
No,
So
please. I welcome
during
it.
World War One, we all know that soldiers can be honoured with medals for doing
Mhm.
something exceptional. But the king and queen at the time worked out that the civilians were doing exceptional things because they had to, because it was wartime. And they wanted to find a way of recognizing them. So they started this, what they call honors system, which is anything from a sort of, it goes all the way up to being knighted, really. So you could be a knight or a dame, but there are sort of three different honors you can get if you do something exceptional in your field. And absolutely out of the blue, this time 2 years ago, actually, I got a letter saying that the Queen had decided, somebody had put me forward, and there's a whole kind of board of people that decide, and then the Queen and the Prime Minister of the time sign off. That you've done exceptionally well in your field, or you've done something exceptional, and in my case, for my services to literature. So not just the writing of the book. I think because of the charity work and the literacy work and the other kind of things that I do as part of my job. But I hadn't been aware anyone knew I was doing any of these things because my dad, who I tease a lot and tell all the stories that make him sound terrible, actually is a very wise and generous, decent man. And he always had a rule that if you do a charitable act and then talk about it, you might as well have not done it.
Yeah,
So,
I
for
agree with that.
instance, if you give someone some like a money or your coat or whatever, and then you tell everyone else that you gave your coat, you're doing it for the praise. So don't do it. Just do it because it's the good thing to do. So no, I didn't know anyone kind of had been adding up what I'd done, and I didn't know anyone had put me forward for this award. And it's a big deal in England because we're snobs. We're terrible snobs.
It's a
We're
big
horrible.
deal in general.
I wish we weren't, but we are. So I am now Adele Parks MBE. Very sadly, so at first I got a beautiful sort of certificate of the Queen that she had signed, but very sadly the Queen then died before the award ceremony. But very joyfully, I got the King's inaugural ceremony of giving out these awards. So I had the Queen's very last sort of, list. I was on her last list, and the King's very first ceremony. So I have met King Charles, and he was indeed very charming and wonderful, and exactly how you would hope. Um, and it was a fabulous day, absolutely extraordinary. I spent a lot of time worrying about my clothes and hair and my curtsy, because they do ask you to curtsy. You don't have to. So I said to my husband, I said to Jim, I'm not going to curtsy. I don't think one person should curtsy to another. I'm not going to do it. And he was a bit horrified, actually, because Jim is significantly more traditional than I am. So I always was going to curtsy, because if you're the kind of person who's accepting an award, you're probably the kind of person who's buying into the whole royal thing. So I was quite happy to do a little nod. I was going to be doing it. But I enjoyed teasing Jim and having him very
Totally.
stressed out at the thought I wasn't doing it. But then I realized as I was walking into the room in my very high heels and my tight skirt that I hadn't practiced said curtsy because I was so busy joking with my husband that this wasn't going to happen. So it was a little bob in the end. It was all fine. And my mum and dad were there, and and Conrad was there. But you can only have 3 tickets for the palace. So my adorable husband, I offered it to Conrad, thinking there was no way on God's earth that Conrad would say yes. I thought he would think it was boring. And I told him, would you like to come along and support me on the day? And he was just blown away. Mum, what an honor. I'd love to. And I was like, oh, but you're at uni and you'd have to take time off. Trying
Don't
to
worry about it.
back. Yeah,
Yeah.
fine. He's like, I would absolutely do that. It's no problem. I want to come. So then I said to Jim, gosh, who am I going to ask? My mum or my dad? It's really difficult. And he said, you can't choose between your mum and dad. You will have to take both your mum and dad, and I will drop you off at the gate, and I will pick you up at the gate. And that's what he did. Love him. So
He's a
yeah, he
doll.
didn't get into the palace. Although he keeps saying, if I ever get a dame, if I ever get if the top one comes available, somebody
Mm-hmm.
has that. He said, I am first on your list, Adele. Mind you, he
So
didn't know I'd
cute.
met you. Now I've met you. He's back up. He's second.
You're like, I'll be there. Don't worry. I'll fly in. Could you imagine? Oh my gosh.
But yeah, it was great fun. It
He's
was
yeah.
really, it was beautiful. The palaces are stunning. They allow you quite a few hours to sort of you go through various rooms and take in all the art, and
That's amazing.
there's a guide in each room to talk you through the history before you see the king and do the ceremony. And there's sort of live orchestra, little orchestra, it's quartet really. I don't know why I said orchestra. I've really overplayed it there. It is a quartet. And
I
then
would have believed you. I was like, oh
I
yeah.
know, I read
That.
it. I thought, no, that's not true. That's just my version, in my head version. And then there's photos, and then yeah, it's just perfect. It was really beautiful, and it was a lovely. It was a year after. It's sort of you get the award, then another year before we had the ceremony.
Physically, yeah.
Yeah, and that was a year ago, and I'm still living off the story.
I think it's beautiful. I didn't want to end the podcast without saying it, just
Oh,
because it's
bless
not
you.
only is it so unique, but it just shows how incredible you are at what you do.
Oh,
And I also love the way that you talk about it, because you've never, like, even the first time that we talked about it, it was never a gloating thing. And actually, going back to your dad, it was never. I could tell how excited and honored you were, but it never seemed. You just do it in a way that I know that it's just so that you're genuinely excited about it, and then it's not something that
you know, I know
it
this is
means
going to
something to you.
sound. It really does mean a lot to me, and it's going to sound un. It's going to sound a bit unbelievable, but it's absolutely true. When they first of all, first of all, I nearly missed it because 3 times I put it in spam because I assumed it was actual spam and a joke, and I didn't
Yeah.
answer the first 3 times. And in the end, my agent rang me up and said, you do have to respond even if it's a no. And I said, to what? What we're talking about? And he said, well, the MBE, clearly. I was like, that's real.
You're like, that was
Real.
real.
And he said, yes, it's real. And also, you have 5 hours left now. They've been trying to get in touch with you for 2.5 months, and you've now 5 hours before the deadline
Oh
because
my gosh.
they had to do all sorts of things like check you've paid your taxes, check you haven't got
Right.
any, felonies and all that kind of thing. So you have a sort of timeline where you have to agree to it, and then they go and check you're okay. Anyway, so then I read the note, and I have to say, I was very un-MBE because I swore a lot. I cursed a lot, like excited curse, bleep, 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 coming out.
Same.
Jim came into the room with my office guy and going, what is it? And I was like, look, I've been put up for an MBE. I might get an MBE. So he read it and he said, what's it for, Adele? And I said, oh, services to literature. And he said, do you think they'll assume you can read? And I was like, yeah, what are you talking about? He said, well, it actually says you've already got it. But even at that stage, I still was sort of so excited.
I can hear him say that.
Yeah.
I can
And
hear
I
him
was
say it.
kind of reading it going, oh, I can't possibly have it. They're just going to put me up and then they're going to tell me I haven't got it. But it's been nice that I was in the running. Oh, how lovely. I'd already sort of had a whole dialogue in my head that I hadn't got this. And he said, you already have it. It's already signed off. Keep reading. And there's the Prime Minister's signature. And I was like, wow, okay, so I have it.
Crazy.
But then they make you keep it a secret. You're not meant to tell anyone until New Year's Eve, and then it's announced in the Sunday Times and the Times newspaper and on TV and things. And then it was my dad's 80th, and I thought I have to tell him. His birthday was like 2 weeks before Christmas. I thought I have to tell him. So I told my dad, and he is this sort of northern, and in England, the northerners are known for kind of being quite buttoned up and they don't show their emotions and that sort of thing. Men, the women are the opposite. So he just sort of stood up and he went out the room, and just at the room he paused, and if I hadn't looked up, he filled up. Now I have seen him bury both his parents, and I haven't, and his grandma, and he only ever cried at his grandma's. He doesn't do it. He went to the kitchen and then he came back with a tray and some coffee. My coffee was in a cup with a saucer. And I was like, I get a cup and saucer now? Because normally we'd be a mug. And he was like,
Hilarious.
you get a cup and saucer now. And that was the
Aw.
moment that I knew.
You
I
knew.
haven't had a cup and saucer every time. It was just once. But it was so cute because he just wanted to somehow mark the occasion, give it some
Yeah.
formality. It's really cute.
It's adorable. What a
Thank you.
dad thing. It's so cute.
Yes, a real dad thing. Yeah.
I love
No, I
that.
feel I've really kept you tonight. You have night for
No,
me, day for you.
it's totally that's totally my fault, but I'm glad that I did. I wouldn't have wanted it any other way.
Oh,
Thank you for
we
staying
also knew we would.
and chatting with me. I knew we would.
I
I,
knew we would.
I 1,000% knew we would. So
Oh,
Hudson actually edits these, and poor guy is going to be like, "You talked for 2 hours." So, it is what it is.
It
At
is.
least we said so many good things about them.
We did, so you can hear all of that. And also, have we stopped now? Have we stopped?
No, I'll just stop. Okay. Thank you, Adele. I can't wait for people to hear this episode, and I can't wait for them to see what we did together. So
I can't either. It's such
until
a joy
then.
talking to you.
And that's a wrap on another empowering episode of Women in the Nude. The conversation doesn't stop here. Stay connected with us by following us on Instagram, Women in the Nude Podcast, for behind-the-scenes sneak peeks, thought-provoking quotes, and updates on upcoming episodes. Subscribe to us on YouTube for full-length video podcasts, Sasha Pieterse, as well as visiting our website, Women in the Nude Podcast, for more resources and past episodes. Thank you for joining us on this naked journey to wellness and self-love. Remember, vulnerability is strength, and by sharing our stories, we empower each other. Special thanks to my amazing producer, Hudson Sheaffer, aka my hot husband, for making this podcast possible.